This Week in Richmond is made possible in part by Dignity Memorial, caring for our communities with a network of funeral homes and cemeteries in Virginia and throughout North America. More information about Dignity Memorial's providers is online at dignitymemorial.com. The Virginia Chamber of Commerce, the voice of the Virginia business community, working in legislative, regulatory, and political arenas to promote the free enterprise system. Information at vachamber.com. Virginia hospitals and health systems provide jobs. They support our economy and promote public health. Local hospitals are always open to help people with unexpected health needs. Having a stable healthcare network is vital. Virginia hospitals are our lifeline.
It's amazing what my students with special needs can accomplish. Their pride is priceless. That's why I teach.
Brought to you by the Virginia Education Association, because a good education is good for everybody.
Additional support is provided by these sponsors. And by the members of Virginia's public television stations. Thank you.
Welcome to This Week in Richmond, and a very special welcome to Delegate Jennifer McClellan. It's sort of delegate, and we'll explain that in just a minute, but first began serving as a delegate in the House of Delegates in 2006. Yes. Already 25th in seniority. There's been a fair amount of turnover representing a portion of the city of Richmond and then a portion also of Henrico County.
That's right.
I'll tell our viewers before we get started that this is going to be part of a series of shows. And we're starting with you, and we'll be hearing about the National Convention in Philadelphia from someone else. We'll hear about Cleveland, and then we'll end that series a little bit later in October with the Department of Elections looking at the who all's on the ballot, because tell our viewers, we're having the conversation here in the very 1st of August.
That's right.
It will be the 26th of August before the deadline for others to qualify for the ballot. So we don't know who else beyond the two known delegates will actually be on the Virginia ballot until that time. But we appreciate your being on. When I said you were delegate, the part we want to focus on this show almost exclusively is being a delegate to the National Convention and what that was like. You and I were talking just a minute ago, and I said I would be among those who, between Cleveland and Philadelphia, I don't want to count the number of hours that I watched television, but we only saw what was on in the evenings.
Well, it was a very exciting time. Long days, long nights, but worth every minute of it. Each day began with a delegation breakfast where we would hear from various speakers. So all of our statewide elected officials addressed us, including Senator Kane before he accepted the nomination as vice president. We would get our credentials, and then throughout the morning there were caucus and council meetings. So I attended the Women's Caucus and the Black Caucus, but there were other Youth Caucus, Labor Council, and a wide variety of constituency groups meeting. And then the convention gavelled in each day between 3:30 and 4, depending on how much was on the agenda. But what we found pretty early was you wanted to get there as soon as possible before the seats were taken. Every delegate was guaranteed a seat, but if you wanted your preferred seat, you had to get there pretty early.
Right.
And for the first time, Virginia was front and center, so our seats were pretty coveted. So I tended to get to the convention hall between 12 and 1 o'clock, and then we usually gavelled out between 11 and midnight each night.
Long days.
Long days.
Very, very long days.
Yes.
So take the part then when you gavelled in. until the time that I don't believe networks were really picking up the convention until close to the 7 o'clock hour.
That's right. C-SPAN showed gavel to gavel.
Yes.
But you sort of started out typically with the Pledge of Allegiance and the national anthem. The first day there were reports, the Credentials Committee, the Rules Committee, and the Platform Committee. Their reports were all adopted. And you had a wide variety of speakers from across the nation, from state representatives, from state legislatures across the state, across the country. Average citizens who had met Secretary Clinton along the way and were supporting her. Mayors of various cities, governors. Most of the governors were primetime. You had one night all of the women of the Senate spoke, and another night all of the women in the House, all members of the Legislative Black Caucus, the AAIP caucus, the Hispanic caucus, and so really got to showcase the Democratic Party throughout the day. And of course they saved the most prominent speakers for prime time.
We were talking again just before the show, and I made the observation that for me, opening night had some similarities both in Cleveland and in Philadelphia with some tensions. What were some of those tensions like? You're being there on the floor on the Monday evening.
It wasn't that bad. Anytime you have delegates to the convention, they're going to be among the most passionate supporters of the candidate.
Right.
And so there were some very passionate Bernie Sanders delegates who had hoped for a different outcome. And they expressed that view. But that night, Senator Sanders fully endorsed Secretary Clinton, called for unity, and you had some of his most vocal supporters, Ben Jealous and Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard of Hawaii, giving their full support. And so we actually saw this year more Sanders delegates had endorsed Hillary as of the convention than 8 years ago, when I think you saw a bit of the same thing with Hillary supporters who had to come behind Senator Obama. So, we're pretty unified. You'll always have some people who will continue to be vocal. I think there were a lot of people, you all couldn't hear exactly what they were chanting. It was mostly people chanting against the no TTP.
Yes.
And the party platform actually opposes TPP. So in the end, Senator Sanders was very involved in the development of the platform. It's the most progressive platform the party has ever had. And I think he and his supporters can be really proud that what he accomplished in this campaign ultimately resulted in a much better ticket, a much better platform as we move forward.
On television, a lot of the focus of that early time was on the California delegation, where there was some very ardent, I would say, Sanders supporters that hadn't gotten over the fact yet at that time that he wasn't the nominee. Go back to the Virginia delegation. I would assume that there were Sanders supporters among the Virginia delegation, but how was it in your part of the floor? Was it as energetic as it was in California?
Well, let me just say, in general, Virginia was very energetic overall. I mean, I don't know if you noticed, but anytime a Virginian, Tim Kaine, a place in Virginia was mentioned, we were pretty rowdy.
Yes.
And I think we were very unified coming behind the candidate. Again, there were some who wanted to be sure that their opposition to TPP and their support for Senator Sanders was still understood. But we got along really well.
Let me go back to your coming into the convention hall. There was some attention given by the major media, not a great deal, but what was happening outside. Mm-hmm. And how did you experience that as far as the demonstrators that were there, the law enforcement folks? How was it day one and on the other days? Maybe also in leaving, what was it like?
Well, I think by the time everything was over, everybody was exhausted, and you didn't see
By
much
Thursday
of anybody.
night. By Thursday
Right.
night, yeah.
Right. There were protests on Saturday. There are always protests. This was my 6th convention. On the weekend leading into it, on the first day, there are always protests of some kind. and you saw some of that. But they were orderly, and everyone was respectful of the opinions being expressed. Again, I got to the convention hall so early, and I actually took the subway instead of the buses, so I missed a lot of that, because I think they focused most of their attention on in different areas than where I was. But from what I saw, it was pretty standard what you would see at any convention.
Well, certainly it goes way back before your time, but it was nothing like Chicago.
Not at all.
Neither convention in Cleveland or Philadelphia came, I think, close to being like all the turmoil in Chicago.
Right.
Back in the late 1960s.
Right.
Okay, so the platform is set. The speakers are there. Policy issues are being worked out, but you knew who was going to be the choice for VP, and you have some long history with Tim Kaine.
I do. I have known him since he was my city councilman. When he was mayor, I was president of the metro area Richmond Young Democrats, and he was often a supporter of our events, and we were a supporter of his. We got elected the same day on the same ballot, me to the House of Delegates and him governor. I was a congressional district chair when he ran for lieutenant governor, and he performed my wedding ceremonies. So he's been a mentor, a friend. I'm so incredibly proud of him, and I think we are going to see people across the country fall in love with him the way Virginians have.
Now, prior to either party getting to the point of naming and then nominating VPs, some of the talking heads on all the news were reminding some of us that VP candidates often are the attack persons that do a lot of the attacking. And while we'll have a Republican speak about their choice, but in a way it appears that neither one of them that's their history of being strong attack people.
Well, I think if you recall, when Tim ran each of his races, he was not shy about showing contrasts between himself and his opponents, and I think how you define attack is all in who you are, but he's shown he's not going to be shy about showing the contrasts between Secretary Clinton and Donald Trump, and criticizing him where appropriate. I think he has a unique style of doing it. He tends to do it sort of with a smile, but he's not shy to do it.
Yeah, and I suppose I was referring more to that the style of doing it. Not that the VPs won't be pointing out and somewhat attacking, but the style is certainly not one of who's thought of as a major attack person, a negative.
No, I mean, he's one of the nicest, most positive people in general, let alone politicians I've ever met. And so when he does criticize his opponents or other people, he does it in a respectful way, and I think we'll continue to do that.
The choice of Senator Kaine, it didn't surprise you probably at all. Did you run into people in Philadelphia who were somewhat surprised? I know, again, the Sanders people seems like had other choices.
Well, I think for people who aren't from Virginia or had not had any interaction with him, they were a little surprised. But he's not unknown completely. I mean, he was chair of the DNC. So a lot of people there, were familiar with him. He has been a very popular speaker at other party fundraising dinners, and so. But I think if you look at his record, both as governor and as senator, he makes sense. You don't just look at. I mean, I think when you look for a vice presidential candidate, you're looking for somebody who can be a partner, who can step in and govern, but who also knows how to campaign. And he's never lost an election. He led Virginia through some very difficult times with the recession and the tragedy at Virginia Tech. And he has foreign policy experience, and that was something that I think the last time he came very close in 2008, and that was one of the knocks on him. And after going to the Senate, he certainly gained that experience.
Speaking of the 2008 for just a moment, certainly one of the speakers who appeared to be very much loved by the people, according to the way the media focused on it, was the current VP.
Oh, yes. I think there were lots of tears in the hall, including from him when he came. I mean, he is sort of Uncle Joe, and everyone showed their love for him. I think the same is true for President Obama and Michelle Obama. All three of them, will be missed, and we showed our love for them the nights they spoke.
Thinking about those three speeches and others, but particularly those three, again, what was it like? You were there on the floor. Those of us, some people read about it. Mm-hmm. Some people both read and watched at least wherever the cameras were focusing, predominantly on the speakers, of course.
Yes.
What was it like?
Amazing. It's particularly the First Lady speaking as a mother. I'm a mother, and I think she really touched. I mean, I shed a lot of tears that week, but particularly when she spoke, when she talked about how she wakes up every morning in a house built by slaves, yes, and now to watch her children playing on the front lawn, that was a very emotional moment. When she talked about how she has been able, and just thinking about how she has been able to have some sense of normalcy for them, and to raise them in the spotlight, and to teach them that no matter what people say about her parents, and there's been a lot of negative things said about President Obama over the years, some coming from a very dark place. She taught them, you don't get that till we are above that, and I think that set the right tone. When President Obama spoke, just reflecting on how far we have come in the past 8 years. When he came into office, the economy was on the verge of collapse. The auto industry, the American auto industry, was on the verge of collapse. And we not only weathered that, but we have some of the lowest unemployment in history right now. But there's still a lot of work to be done, and he reminded us of that. And so, and all three of them, just in general, are very, very good speakers. And so to be in the room, I think the most exciting moment for all three is when they walked out, and just the reaction from the crowd. And when at the end of President Obama's speech, when Secretary Clinton walked out, and to see the hug that they had, there was a clear affection between the two of them, which 8 years ago people did not expect to see. And I think for me, having gone through that primary, it was, I mean, that was very touching to see that here are two people who have grown not only to respect one another, but to like one another, who worked very well as a team. And it was just to see the first African-American president, and who will hopefully be the first woman president, just filled me with a great deal of pride. Again,
those who analyze those speeches almost to death, you might say, as they did, and also in Cleveland after that, certainly suggested, even after all those speeches were made, that the one that there would be those quotes that people would remember were really from the First Lady, that from her speech. And that's not to put you on the spot to say which one you liked best of those and all the others, but the one quote that you mentioned, and the other quote being, when they go low, we'll go high. I mean, yes, there were other quotes that
oh, so many. I mean,
yes,
they're all very different. There were so many and very different emotions with all of them. I think from Secretary Clinton, the contrast that she made between her and Donald Trump, and particularly reminding people we don't nobody can fix it alone. We are stronger together, which is the theme of the campaign. And that was said a lot. We are stronger together was very touching.
Well, reminding our viewers that we'll have someone on giving an equal presentation from Cleveland and from the Republican candidate. Let's switch in our last 4 or 5 minutes and have you speak to this issue. What are some of the policy issues that you think are important for people to reflect on? And since we're going to be covering all of the candidates, I'd be glad for you to say why should they vote for Secretary Clinton?
Sure. Well, I think always the economy is forefront on people's mind, and we all recognize that while we have come a long way in the past 8 years, there are some people that still we have a long way to go to get them back to work. Secretary Clinton has put forward a jobs plan to have the largest investment in job creation since World War II, particularly focusing on those manufacturing jobs that have gone away, and focusing on making sure that things are made and built in America again. We have a long way to go on criminal justice reform. One of the most moving moments of the entire convention was when the mothers of the movement, led by Sandra Brand's mother, spoke, and how we really need to come to grips with what's been going on between the African American community and the police department, and that you can focus on building and repairing that relationship everywhere without being anti-police, and how we have to do that. We have to address gun violence. It is unacceptable that gun violence has spiked as much as it has in the past few years. I recall last year, I think there were more mass shootings than there were days in the year. We have to come to grips with that, and Secretary Clinton is going to focus on doing just that. Those are just a few. Healthcare, making sure that the gains we made under the Affordable Care Act, where more people are now covered than ever before, and that you don't lose your health insurance, or you can get health insurance even if you have a pre-existing condition. And now being a woman is not a pre-existing condition, making sure that we build on those gains. So those are just a few of the policies. If you go to her website, she's got pretty detailed information on just about every issue you can think about. But those, I think, are the big ones that were talked about at the convention.
Let me mention one more that was, it continues even into early August being talked about, and that's veterans, and about,
Yes.
That we'll certainly expect to have someone speaking from the Republican side speaking to that as well, but there's been ongoing news about veterans matters.
Yes, and first, just honoring all of our veterans, regardless of their national origin or their religion. And I think when one of the most powerful moments of the convention was when Mr. Khan spoke and talked about the ultimate sacrifice that his son made for his country, who was a Muslim, and he should be honored for that. And the reaction from Mr. Trump was just disappointing is an understatement. And I think we need to make sure that our veterans, when they come back, we deal with the issues they face, whether it's PTSD, whether it's traumatic brain injuries. Their service should not end when they come home. Our service to them shouldn't end when they come home. And if they have medical issues resulting from their service, they need to be addressed. And I think that's something that we all care about and will focus on in this election.
Dr. McClellan, we very much appreciate your making the case for the candidate of your choice and the VP candidate of your choice, and also giving us some insight of what was going on behind the scenes and on the floor of the convention. And we'll tell our viewers we're going to be hearing from Republicans as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
This Week in Richmond is made possible in part by Dignity Memorial, caring for our communities with a network of funeral homes and cemeteries in Virginia and throughout North America. More information about Dignity Memorial's providers is online at dignitymemorial.com. The Virginia Chamber of Commerce, the voice of the Virginia business community. For jobs, the economy, and public health, Virginia Hospitals, our lifeline.
The Virginia Education Association, because a good education is good for everybody.
Additional support is provided by these sponsors. And by the members of Virginia's public television stations. Thank you.